starting now. So my first question is about the series. So more than being physically and technically trained for the series, the actors had one more skill, which was to mimic the way the characters played. So I'd like to know what it was like for you as a professional coach to work on the kind of opposite of that, since mimicking someone, I think, is making a person addicted to a movement, and that is not what the NBA demands of an athlete.
Oh,
Right?
so that's a great question. So it actually stretches very far back. So this is a process that we've probably been dealing with for almost 2.5, 3 years. So when Adam McKay and the HBO folks reached out to me, what I explained to them that it's a three-part process in order to turn these characters into their silhouettes of their character. So most of them, except for Solomon, pretty much had football backgrounds, right, or didn't play. So the first most important thing was to turn them into an athlete. Not that they weren't athletic, but athletes sort of in the context of what a basketball player does. So on a 94 by 50 court, you have to be able to run, be agile, be quick, have certain aerobic and anaerobic capacity, be fluid in your movement. So once you create the basketball athlete, the next thing you have to do is create the basketball player. So it's about, and then all of a sudden they have to be able to learn all the technical skills necessary. Because in my experience, when you show up on set and the director wants to improvise or wants to kind of like do something unscripted, well, the character has to be able to improvise. So if imagine this was a Bruce Lee movie, right? And all he was able to do was one punch, and the director wanted to improvise, you'd be stuck. So what was very important is that these actors learned how to play, shoot, run, dribble, pass, defend, do everything that a basketball player had to do. Then from there, you had to turn them into the silhouette of their character, which then, so that when the audience is watching, they don't go, oh, that's an actor playing it. They actually fundamentally believe they're watching Magic Johnson. So it's a very, very complex process in terms of being able to turn that person into that particular character. So it wasn't just, okay, this is how Larry Bird shoots. It's more like a complete transformation from athlete to basketball player, then to silhouette. So if you're asking me, is it different than training professional basketball players? Sort of. It all falls under the title to me of performance, right? So when you work in the world of the NBA, performance is measured differently. I'm looking at speed, I'm looking at vertical, I'm looking at efficiency, I'm looking at shot selection. It's different kind of metric. But in the cinematic world, it still falls in the world of performance, meaning that they have to look authentic, their movement have to pop on camera, they have to capture the emotional beats of the story, they have to deliver on lines. So it still falls under the idea of performance. It's just defined by different metrics.
Oh, cool. I'm talking about the first season and now the second season of the series.
Yeah.
For the first season, I read that you were initially scheduled to work with Quincy Isaiah, first of all, and the responsibility grew over the time, moving on to training the entire cast of players, and then even giving ideas in other scenes. I read about the Jerry Tarkanian scenes of pick and roll with the in the table.
Yes.
And some ideas for the footage styles for the game. So I want to ask you how this process of increasing responsibility was for you during the first season, and how it was carried over to the second season too.
So initially when I got a call, it was, could I turn Quincy into Magic Johnson? And I laughed because there are 400 guys in the NBA who can't be Magic Johnson, right? So then I asked, what's my time frame? And they said, oh, what can you do in a week? And I laughed again, thinking this is like turning, Bruce Lee into Bruce Lee in a week. It wouldn't happen. So I said, hey, let me fly to LA. Let me look under the hood. Let me see what we have here. And so Quincy's such a great learner. He's like great feet. He's like such a great student that he learned pretty quickly. And so then it became, can I do the same thing with Jamal Wilkes, with Norm Nixon, with Larry Bird, with Kareem, with Dr. J, with Michael Cooper? And then from there, it became all the casting responsibilities. It became all the choreography. It became, like sort of being the liaison between director and talent the day that we have to actually shoot, because you have to be able to execute all the stuff you choreograph. It became script interpretation and advising on all things basketball. So initially I came on to do one thing, then eventually it became just a lot of other things. And then, HBO sort of was very kind to give me a producer credit for season 2, just because there are a lot of creative responsibilities associated with it. But it's been a fantastic experience. The ability to work with such talented, devoted, creative people in a culture that encourages collaboration and kindness and gratitude. It's really a special place, and I'm very grateful for Winning Time and for HBO and Adam McKay and his folks for giving me the opportunity.
Oh, cool. So I have a question about Steph Curry and Magic Johnson. I know this Monday, Stephen Curry said that he thinks he's the best point guard in NBA history and mentioned that the conversation is between him and Magic. So you had the opportunity to personally work with great point guards like Chris Paul and Steph himself. Yes. And now you were extremely engaged in Magic's career. So what's your opinion about both of them, Steph and Magic? If the conversation about the point guard is between the two? Or...
No, it's like asking me what's better, a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. I mean, they're both spectacular, right? So I think they're like, because I know them personally, I can speak to them personally, right? Like, Steph is, when people ask me what's so special about Steph, it's like being around the Dalai Lama. Like, he's so righteous and kind and gentle, but at the same time so fierce. The fact that he believes he's the best point guard in history, I think that's a great belief in yourself. I mean, many people would say yes. I think was Magic extraordinary? Absolutely, as well. I don't know if I ever can say like who's best or better or this. To me, you're looking at just the most iconic representations of greatness in sport, whether it's Steph Curry, whether it's LeBron James, whether it's Magic Johnson, or Larry Bird. Like, everyone is entitled to sort of sit at the top of the mountain and be able to sort of pound their chest and say, I was great, because they've all had fantastic careers. If you're asking me like who would I start a team with, well, that's another conversation for another podcast, right? But I think that Steph is magical in his own way, and Magic is magical in his own way as well.
Also, it's a polemic, for instance. I have one last question here. My time is running out. So I'd like to know if there is any specific stage in a basketball player's life that is usually the most complex and challenging to develop, like a college player to aiming to the NBA, or a rotational player looking to increase his role, or that is a subjectivity of each player. It's not something about the stage in life. And if the process with training no players for the series was more complex for you compared to training real players.
I think it's a fantastic question. It's never been asked before. I think that any like monumental goal is going to be extraordinarily complex and require tremendous devotion and sacrifice and struggle, right? So I've prepared lots of guys for the NBA draft that went #1 first round. I've helped rotation players become all-stars. I've helped all-stars become Hall of Famers, right? So to me, it's all like, I would never want to diminish the goal, right? Because all of it is very, very challenging. I think what Winning Time shows me and shows a lot of people is that when you have like a real commitment and a lot of really talented people who are focused on one goal, you can make miracles happen. And I think it's what people don't realize is just the extraordinary commitment that these actors did to become their characters. During COVID, we would train virtually. And in LA, they took the rims off the backboards. So these guys were doing virtual training with me, shooting on baskets that had no rims. And so I think no one really understands like what the devotion level was to the show. They just see the finished product and they go, oh my God, it's really entertaining. That's great. But they don't realize there have been thousands and thousands of hours of sacrifice to put in something to them to make the show special.
So thank you, Eden. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, Pedro.
Ciao. Valeu. Thank you, Lucio.
Valeu.